Each week, The Score from Bearing Drift brings listeners news, reviews, and interviews.
To learn more, visit bearingdrift.com.
Well, I'll take at the very beginning what you said. It would require a constitutional amendment, which is one of the most difficult things that we could implement. So even if you could do it statutorily, we're giving Congress a lot of power and a lot of influence, and we're going down a route we might not necessarily want to go. On top of that, it's not going to depoliticize the court. In fact, it would do the exact opposite. It would tie the success of partisan political elections to the fate of the Supreme Court. The rhetoric we saw in 2016 would be amplified with special interest groups and politicians knowing that this issue would happen twofold every presidential term. The 18-year term limit proposal, as mentioned before, would guarantee 2 vacancies each presidential term. And this is assuming we don't have premature deaths or retirements.
Right.
It's possible one president serving 2 terms could appoint a majority of the Supreme Court. If people are upset with the court now, I would hate to see what it would be with one president having 5 justices. How an opportunity would be for justices after their 18-year terms to come back to retirement. For a lot of those justices, though, those are part-time positions, and for many of them, there are going to be unprecedented opportunities for a retiring Supreme Court justice. I'm curious, I don't think the public would want to see a Supreme Court justice have the opportunity to perhaps work in a law firm and even argue in front of the justices that they served with, or maybe even run for office, which they would have the opportunity for, and perhaps campaign on the decisions they wrote while they're on the bench. I think that would hurt the legitimacy of the court and hurt its reputation. To go back to knowing that their term is up, you could imagine a scenario at a justice entering their 16th year under the presidential administration of someone who they consider friendly, and maybe being tempted to retire early, eliminating and really causing chaos in this 2 vacancy per term setup, because they know that their legacy is going to be continued if that president nominates a justice to replace them at that time, instead of gambling on a future election.
Gotcha. Is this proposal stacked with loopholes?
I think so, and I think it's very difficult to try to legislate for the future. And he just mentioned that someone now being the general counsel of Boeing. Imagine that person coming back to being on the Supreme Court. People, I think this is one of the reasons that hurts the legitimacy of the plan, where people, again, they can have lives after their terms, and they're going to have their lives. They're going to have significant opportunities, and one of the contingencies to bring them back presents numerous conflicts of interest.
All right, Anthony, tell me how other countries handle this issue.
Well, I think the vast majority of countries, and I think Gabe would point this out correctly, do have some version of term limits or a mandatory retirement age. And they do for a variety of reasons. I think, again, looking back at the historical traditions of the United States, it's different and for a good reason. And also, the logic doesn't apply here. If we need term limits at the Supreme Court, then it follows we need term limits then for district judges and circuit judges. They have tremendous power in the lower federal courts. They can issue nationwide injunctions stopping federal programs. They can sentence criminal defendants to decades in prison. And the Supreme Court only hears 70-some odd cases a year. So the tremendous power that we're worried about the Supreme Court still applies in the lower courts as well.